And there, of course, the British troops now are moving forward to try to engage them. Americans have formed a skirmish line, light infantry. And I can see in the distance there as well, and you'll see very shortly, there's the American flags coming through. The blue one, of course, is for the Army, and the yellow one is for the regiment. And now the mass of American troops are starting to pour onto the street there. They're facing directly off with their British counterparts and are showing a good deal of discipline in doing so. And that's what happens when everyone fires at once, ladies and gentlemen. That's known as a volley. It's like a machine gun with everyone going at the same time. Those large caliber balls of lead whistling across the battlefield. Notice how the British line is being stretched now to deal with those skirmishers on the American right side. Notice those drums playing. Not only are they creating a better sense of morale, small artillery piece going off there, ladies and gentlemen. But the drums are also used to communicate with the soldiers, to let them know when they have to change direction or tactics or position. There they are at a half trot, trying to get over to this far side. Worst thing that could happen to you if you were formed in lines like that is if you were flanked. And another artillery. You did not want to be flanked. You did not want the enemy to be able to turn the end of your column there, or when they're lined up, to get behind them. That could indeed turn into a disaster. So, those commanding officers are keeping a close eye on where that line is and how they're engaging with the enemies. This artillery, of course, is causing a lot of damage, and should, if not dead on and hitting the soldiers, certainly in a small rural urban area, it could do extensive damage, of course, to all the houses and shops that they would be bordered by. And that British left wing now is disengaged and have moved back. They're going to probably get into position so that they have more impact as a volleying part of that front line.
You're gonna fire the cannon again?
At this point that the British volleys are being answered en masse by the Americans with their own volleys. And it looks like we have one of the British soldiers is down, being checked on by an officer, and then he's moving his troops out of there. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, at 40 or 50 yards, one of those musket balls could go right through a man and halfway through the man behind him. That's how the velocity worked on those particular weapons. If you're wondering why everybody just doesn't fire at the same time, it's so they can keep a consistent rate of fire going. One side, of course, is firing while the other men on the line are busy loading their weapons and getting ready. And that way they can keep an almost consistent and constant barrage of volleys from those infantrymen. And now the British center is, part of it is falling back into a better position, I would assume, and their flank is going out there to try and stretch that line a bit. And the Americans are really pushing forward. With the numerical advantage, they know that they can take this smaller group, and if they keep the pressure up, they will force them to even slowly move back, fall back in their positions, putting them closer. And of course, there's the artillery again, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most deadly things on the battlefield. A shell could potentially kill 8 or 9 men if it landed right amongst them. Oh, there's a few more of the British soldiers have fallen, ladies and gentlemen, on that last volley. And now it looks like we have movement here on the Americans' right flank. It shows you just how tight things are, ladies and gentlemen, when you see the British troops moving at a double step like that and into a jog. They are desperately trying to maintain their position in an orderly fashion, and what they do not want to have happen is a rout where they are forced by the Americans to turn around and flee. That's the worst possible thing that can happen. That's instant defeat at that point. They need to retire, regroup, and slowly maneuver according to where they want to end up. If you notice, the flags now are well back from where they started off, and that would indicate, of course, exactly where the center of the line is. It would be a catastrophe to have your flags captured. So that is why they're in a position well behind that front line. And notice that last maneuver, ladies and gentlemen, with the soldiers walking right through the line that's there, forming a new position. And the proximity to where you're seated right now should give you a very good look at exactly how those lines formed, what position they put them in. There's a volley from the American line that was executed immediately by the British with 2 volleys and a 3rd volley. And now the American line is moving forward once again. How will the British respond to that? And the volleys are being traded back and forth, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it would take you nerves of steel to stand there and see your enemy that close and undertake fire and not break and run. And it shows the discipline on both sides because those volleys are coming fast and furious. Well, one of the Fife and Drum Corps have left the field. There's still one, of course, around the flags protecting them.
Oh, they just got him.
Oh, and we have some more British soldiers down, quite a few actually in that last exchange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And one farther down by the American lines. The British are taking a pounding right now, ladies and gentlemen. But once again, they're not panicking, they're not running. They are doing controlled movements as articulated by their leaders on the field. And finally, the skirmish line. You notice how they sort of go at a half run? They have a little more latitude as to how particularly in the militia. There's another resounding volley by the Americans. And really, there is just one central core of British soldiers that is standing between them and making their way up the street.
They've already taken care of
We see some of the Glens coming in here and forming underneath the tree, using the picket fence as the defensive post. And in good order and at good pace, the British troops are turning and putting themselves in position to support that front group. They'll have to move out of there soon because they're receiving withering fire from the American troops.
So what happened?
And a couple of the Americans went down. Some back there. And now that front group is moving out of position into one of greater safety, obviously far too close to those American lines. They need to reposition themselves and slow down those Americans as best as possible. But this does not look good. My goodness, this particular altercation has moved very, very quickly. And in your own mind, if you want to remember where these different lines were, you just have to look to where the fallen are laying on the ground. And that indicates British and American lines that were hit particularly hard. And the colors have left the field, ladies and gentlemen. The flags are gone. This is very much an organized retreat by the British. Oh my goodness, that was a deadly volley for the British there. They lost 3 men in that one firing. And now that small decimated group is attempting, and look at that double time, to make their way off the field.